Sunday brunch at my parents' house was less of a family tradition and more of a weekly performance review. The air was always thick with the scent of expensive coffee, my mother's hollandaise, and quiet, simmering competition. My name is Maya, and for 28 years, I was the understudy in my own family's play, while my older sister, Chloe, was the undisputed star. Where Chloe was sharp, ambitious, and mirrored our father's cutthroat business instincts, I was softer. I was a landscape architect. I worked with living things, with soil and seasons. To my family, my career was a charming hobby. Chloe's work in our father's property development empire was the real world. I was the one who remembered birthdays, who listened to my mother's worries, who fixed the wobbly leg on the patio table. Chloe was the one who closed multi-million-dollar deals and whose name was whispered with reverence at the country club. This particular Sunday, the tension was sharper than the cutlery. My father, Charles, had been hinting for months about a major transition in the company. A passing of the torch. We all knew what it meant. The keys to the kingdom were about to be handed over. So, my father began, setting down his orange juice with a theatrical flourish. Your mother and I have made a decision. We're not getting any younger. It's time to secure the legacy of Sterling Properties. Chloe sat up straighter, a barely contained smirk playing on her lips. She shot me a look that was pure, unadulterated triumph. I've decided, my father continued, his gaze landing squarely on Chloe, that the future of the company is in the most capable hands. Chloe, your work on the Northridge project was exceptional. Ruthless, but exceptional. You have the vision and the drive this company needs. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a single, gleaming key. It was symbolic, of course, but it represented everything. The master key to the corporate headquarters, to the portfolio of luxury buildings, to a fortune. These are yours, he said, sliding the key across the tablecloth to Chloe. Effective immediately, you are the new CEO of Sterling Properties. The air left my lungs. I had known it was coming, but the finality of it, the casual way my entire life's work was deemed unworthy, was a physical blow. My mother clapped her hands together. Oh, Charles. Wonderful. Our girl. And then Chloe looked at me. Her smirk widened into a full, mocking smile. Don't look so crestfallen, Maya, she said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. It's not for everyone. The pressure, the hard decisions, all those boring board meetings. You're much better suited to your gardens. She picked up the key, holding it between her fingers like a trophy. I mean, let's be honest. What did you expect? That dad would hand a billion-dollar empire to someone who spends her days picking out petunias? The table went quiet. My father didn't defend me. He just nodded, as if Chloe had stated a simple, obvious fact. My mother looked down at her plate, uncomfortable but silent. The words, picking out petunias, echoed in the silence, reducing a decade of my passion, my education, my success in creating beautiful, sustainable spaces to a frivolous, childish pastime. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, at the key in her hand, at my parents' complicit faces. The hurt was so profound it instantly crystallized into something else. Something cold, hard, and absolutely resolute. I stood up, my napkin falling to the floor. Congratulations, Chloe, I said, my voice eerily calm. I'm sure you'll be ruthless. I turned and walked out of the dining room, out of the house, and into the bright, uncaring sunshine. She was right about one thing. I hadn't expected my father to hand me the empire. That's because I had been building my own. In secret. For the last 8 years. And the moment she mocked me for picking out petunias was the moment I decided to use my little garden trowel to dig the foundation out from under her feet. The drive home was a blur of white-hot clarity. Chloe's mocking face was seared onto my mind. Picking out petunias. She had no idea. Those petunias were part of multi-million-dollar eco-friendly developments. Those gardens were revolutionary green spaces that reduced urban heat and increased property values by over 20%. While Chloe was learning to strong-arm contractors and leverage debt, I was learning about sustainable architecture, water management, and the untapped market of environmentally conscious luxury. I saw the future, and it was green. And my father's empire, with its glass and steel towers and energy-guzzling designs, was the past. 8 years ago, after my father dismissed my business plan for a green division as hippie nonsense, I had made a decision. I would show him. Using the small trust fund from my grandmother, money my father couldn't touch, I started my own company. I called it Verdant Holdings. I worked out of my small apartment, then a rented office, then my own floor in a building I quietly purchased. I used a network of shell companies and a brilliant, discreet lawyer to keep it all separate from the Sterling name. I was a ghost, operating in the same city, in the same industry, right under my family's noses. My business model was simple but revolutionary. I didn't just build on land, I built with it. I specialized in transforming neglected, post-industrial sites into stunning, sustainable mixed-use communities. I used geothermal energy, recycled water systems, and vertical gardens. I attracted a new class of wealthy, environmentally minded buyers and tenants that Sterling Properties couldn't reach. And I was spectacularly, silently successful. While Chloe was being celebrated for squeezing an extra $1 million out of the Northridge project, I was finalizing the acquisition of the old Johnson Riverfront site, a polluted, bankrupt steel mill that everyone, including my father, had written off. To them, it was a toxic eyesore. To me, it was 200 acres of prime riverfront waiting for redemption. My revenge wasn't going to be a confrontation. It was going to be a hostile takeover of their reality. The Monday after the brunch from hell, I called an emergency board meeting for Verdant Holdings. My small, loyal team, people I had hired for their talent, not their name, gathered in our bright, plant-filled conference room. It's time, I told them. Initiate the Sterling Sunset Protocol. This was the plan we had been developing for years. A meticulous, multi-pronged strategy to systematically acquire key assets from my father's, now Chloe's, empire. We would not attack the company head-on. We would bleed it dry from 1,000 small, precise cuts. We started with their talent. I offered their best project managers, their most innovative architects, and their sustainability consultants, the ones they never listened to, significant equity stakes and creative freedom at Verdant. They jumped ship, eager to escape Chloe's ruthless, outdated management. Next, we went after their debt. Sterling Properties was massively overleveraged, a fact my father had always hidden with bravado and cash flow from new projects. But new projects were drying up. Using our considerable capital, we began buying up Sterling's corporate debt on the secondary market for pennies on the dollar. The final, most beautiful piece of the plan involved the Johnson Riverfront. My masterpiece. The Canopy, as it was now called, was weeks away from its grand opening. It was already the most talked about development in the state, a symbol of the new, green urbanism. And I was going to use it as my stage. I sent a single, formal invitation to the CEO of Sterling Properties, Miss Chloe Sterling. It was for the exclusive, black tie gala celebrating the launch of the Canopy. The invitation did not come from Maya Sterling. It came from the mysterious, reclusive founder and CEO of Verdant Holdings. I knew she would come. Her curiosity, and her arrogance, would demand it. The night of the gala, the transformed riverfront was magical. Twinkling lights reflected off the cleaned-up water, the air smelled of blooming jasmine from the vertical gardens, and the sound of a string quartet mingled with the happy chatter of the city's elite. I stood at the head of the room, wearing a simple, emerald green gown, watching the door. And then she walked in. Chloe, on the arm of our bewildered parents. They looked around, their faces a mixture of awe and confusion. They had no idea who owned this place. Chloe's eyes scanned the room, looking for the mysterious CEO. They passed over me twice before stopping, her brain slowly, painfully, connecting the dots. Her jaw dropped. The color drained from her face. I gave her a small, calm smile and picked up a microphone. The silent empire was about to speak. The chatter in the room died down as I tapped the microphone. Every head turned towards me. I saw my parents' faces morph from confusion to dawning, horrified recognition. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice clear and steady, echoing through the beautiful space I had created. "Welcome to the Canopy. My name is Maya Sterling, and I am the founder and CEO of Verdant Holdings." The gasp from my mother was audible. My father's face went slack with shock. But it was Chloe's expression I savored, a perfect portrait of utter, world-shattering disbelief. "For the last 8 years," I continued, "while many of you thought I was picking out petunias, Verdant Holdings has been quietly redefining urban living. We focus not just on profit, but on purpose. On building communities that give back to the environment, rather than just taking from it." I gestured around the stunning room, at the living walls and the panoramic views of the renewed river. This was once a toxic wasteland. A site every major developer, including my own family's company, wrote off as a lost cause. We saw its potential. I could see the calculations going on in the room. The other developers, the investors, the city officials, they were looking at me with a new, profound respect. They were seeing the future, and I was standing in the center of it. "Verdant's success has allowed us to think about legacy," I said, my gaze now locking directly onto my family, who were standing frozen near the entrance. "And it has allowed us to expand." I nodded to my assistant. The giant screen behind me lit up. "As of 5 p.m. today," I announced, "Verdant Holdings has completed the acquisition of a controlling 51% stake in Sterling Properties." The room erupted. It was the business story of the decade. My father stumbled back a step. Chloe looked like she'd been physically struck, her hand flying to her throat. "The acquisition was made possible," I explained over the din, "by purchasing Sterling's distressed corporate debt and through a tender offer to the minority shareholders, who were eager to align with a more forward-thinking, stable company. I was now their majority shareholder. I was Chloe's boss. I looked directly at my sister, whose face was a mask of humiliated fury. "This isn't a hostile takeover," I said, my voice softening but losing none of its power. "It's a rescue. Sterling Properties is an empire built on the last century's principles. It's bloated, over-leveraged, and environmentally irresponsible. Under new management, it will be integrated into Verdant's sustainable model. There will be a restructuring, but our goal is to preserve jobs and retool for the future." I was taking her company, and I was doing it under the guise of saving it. The ultimate silent revenge. I ended my speech to thunderous, bewildered applause. As people surged forward to congratulate me, my family remained by the door, isolated in a bubble of their own shock. I made my way through the crowd toward them. My father found his voice first. "Maya, why," he stammered. "You taught me to be ruthless, Dad," I said calmly. "You just never thought I'd be ruthless at this." Chloe finally found her voice, a venomous hiss. "You deceitful little bitch. You planned this. You set me up?" "I didn't set you up, Chloe," I replied, my voice dangerously quiet. "You set yourself up. You were so busy looking down on me from your glass tower, you never thought to look down at the foundation. And I was quietly, patiently, digging it out from under you." I turned to my father. "That key you gave her?" I said. "It doesn't open anything anymore. I've changed the locks." I left them there, 3 statues of ruined pride amidst the celebration of my triumph. The little sister who picked out petunias had just become the most powerful property developer in the city. And my revenge was a living, breathing, green and growing thing. In the weeks that followed, the business pages were filled with the stunning rise of Verdant and the fall of the Sterling dynasty. I was portrayed as a visionary, my family as relics who had failed to adapt. The poetic justice was not lost on anyone. The integration of Sterling Properties was a massive undertaking, but my team was brilliant and motivated. We began the process of retrofitting their old buildings with green technology and halted all planned developments that didn't meet our new environmental standards. It was a message to the entire industry: the future had arrived, and it was sustainable. My father, stripped of his title and his legacy, was a broken man. He called me once, his voice hollow. "You destroyed everything I built," he said, not with anger, but with a profound weariness. "No, Dad," I replied, not unkindly. "I saved it from you. What you built was on the verge of collapse. I'm just building something new from the salvage. Something that will actually last." He had no answer. The language of legacy had been redefined, and he no longer understood the vocabulary. Chloe, after a period of radio silence, showed up at my Verdant office. She'd lost the arrogant swagger. She looked tired. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice flat. "Are you going to fire me? Parade me through the office for a final humiliation?" I leaned back in my chair, looking at the sister I had spent a lifetime trying to earn the approval of. "No," I said. "I'm not going to fire you." She looked up, surprised. "You're a brilliant strategist, Chloe. Ruthless, yes. Short-sighted, definitely. But brilliant. The Northridge project was a masterclass in financial engineering, even if the building itself is an energy-guzzling monstrosity." I slid a folder across my desk. "This is the old Sterling portfolio. The parts we're keeping. I want you to run it." She stared at the folder as if it were a snake. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance," I corrected her. "A chance to learn. To be part of something that matters beyond the bottom line. You'll report to me. You'll have to learn a whole new way of doing business. And if you mock one of my landscape architects for picking out petunias, you're out. No second chances." It wasn't forgiveness. It was a strategic decision. Her mind was an asset, and I would be a fool to waste it. But more than that, it was the ultimate power move. Having my once mocking sister report to me, having her success dependent on my vision, was a more profound revenge than any dismissal. She was silent for a long time, then gave a single, sharp nod. "Okay." It wasn't a happy ending. It was a new beginning, fraught with tension and history. But it was a start. A year later, the transformation was undeniable. Verdant was the industry leader. My parents, while still estranged and grappling with their shame, had at least stopped giving interviews about my betrayal. And Chloe? Chloe was thriving. Freed from our father's shadow and forced to innovate, she had become one of my most valuable executives. The rivalry was still there, but it had been channeled into something productive. There was a grudging respect between us that felt stronger than our former, false sisterhood. I was walking through the canopy one afternoon, checking on the mature gardens, when I saw a young couple sitting on a bench, their baby sleeping in a stroller nearby. The air was clean, the sound of the river was peaceful, and the space was full of life. The woman looked up and saw me. "You're Maya Sterling, aren't you?" she said with a warm smile. "I am." We moved here 6 months ago, she said, gesturing to the building. Our daughter has asthma. The doctors said the cleaner air near the river and all these plants would help. And it has. She hasn't had an attack since we moved in. Thank you. Thank you for building this. I felt a lump form in my throat. This was it. This was the revenge that wasn't a revenge. It wasn't tea about the stock prices or the headlines or the look on Chloe's face at the gala. It was about this. A healthy baby. A family living in a beautiful, healthy space. A legacy that wasn't measured in dollars, but in well-being. My sister had mocked me for the keys to a dying empire. I had signed over the deeds to a better future. And as I stood there, in the heart of the world I had built, I knew I had won the only war that ever mattered. The silent revenge had been to live so joyfully, so purposefully, and so successfully in the world they mocked, that their approval became irrelevant. The landscape of my life was now entirely my own design. And it was more beautiful than I had ever imagined. The most powerful revenge is a life lived beyond their expectations. It's taking the very thing they mocked you for and turning it into your greatest strength. You don't just prove them wrong, you build a new world where their opinion doesn't even register. This has been silent revenge.